Number 7. Yep, Week 7 college football here with Chris Ruffalo, Ron Romanelli. And yeah, it's our Week 7 edition. Been through 6 weeks. And definitely have had our shares of ups and downs, seen it all. Today's contest, of course, this week's schedule is also nicknamed 130 teams that didn't offer Carson Wentz. We'll go up and down the schedule here. We've already had one game this week with ULL knocking off Marshall in an upset. What's so funny, Chris?
I thought it was Maroon that they knocked off.
Was it UL-L or just Lafayette? Which one was it?
I don't know. I kind of remember which one's the right one.
It's
I think they're both right.
yeah, we'll go with ULL.
Yeah, there you go.
They appreciate that the most. But we started all off. We've got Thursday night football, UCF and Temple, West Virginia, Baylor. Chris, any thoughts on these two beauties? Let's do Thursday and Friday combo because there's only 4 games total. SMU Navy and FIU UTSA. Oof. Oof.
Well, not to rehash anything for Thursday. I'm going to go right to Friday. I like UTSA laying the big number against FIU. We've already seen FIU against a high-powered offense this season against Western Kentucky. And, yeah, that one ended 73-0. I'm not sure we see the same thing here. But I do think we see UTSA run it up on FIU. I could easily see a 49-10 kind of game. Either way, I see UTSA winning this one by at least 5 scores. So give me the Roadrunners.
Ron, ULL.
Yeah, I think in that Baylor West Virginia game, for me, when a game looks too easy, it kind of tricks me out a little bit. I don't understand why West Virginia is getting those 3.5 points. I would look at these two teams. I think they're pretty similar. And you look at their numbers overall, statistically, both sides of the ball, pretty similar numbers. But getting the home team here with the points and the quarterback, who I believe is the better quarterback in JT Daniels, I like West Virginia and the points. I think that they have a shot to win it outright, but I think no matter what, it's going to be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised to see overtime in that one. So getting over 2 points, not a bad idea. But yeah, I think West Virginia has a shot, but I like them getting the 3.5 points. I like it with the hook. I know it's down to 3 in some books, but I'd shop around and try to get that 3.5. And then the Temple UCF game, I like the under. Temple's offense still one of the weaker offenses in FBS football, but their defense has actually been pretty solid this season. I mean, they haven't faced the toughest of opponents, but they have faced a Big Ten team in Rutgers, held them to 200 yards. They played against Memphis and only gave up 24 points, which is a big win for that kind of team for Temple, and only 300 yards, under 200 passing yards. So Temple's defense is pretty good this season. The offense still not doing much, so I'll take the under 46. It should be all the scoring from UCF. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 24-3 or 24-0 final score.
I like the over in SMU versus Navy. I just think you have strength on offense versus weakness on defense for both sides here. SMU horrible against the run, as we saw last week against UCF, and Navy horrible against the pass. I think we could see the 57.5 go in the first half in this game. So I like the over all the way. Twice on Fridays. Go to our next slot. Kansas taking on Oklahoma. The Sooners 8.5-point favorites after losing 3 games in a row. Got Akron versus Central Mich. Coastal versus ODU. Illinois, Minnesota in a battle of one-loss teams in the Big Ten. Bowling Green, Miami, Ohio. Texas, Iowa State. Ole Miss, Auburn. Let's just stop there. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I like a couple here. I like the over between Kansas and Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's offense wakes up against the Kansas defense. It really hasn't been anything special over the course of this season. And, you're seeing that big line because, news came out, obviously, Jalen Daniels done for the year for Kansas with the shoulder issue. But Jason Bean stepped up. He was a starter for this Jayhawks offense before. Threw for 4 touchdowns against TCU. I think he could have some success against Oklahoma here, but I like this one to go well over that 62.5. I also like the under 39.5 between Minnesota and Illinois. That just screams a 17-10 kind of game for me, a black and blue Big Ten slugfest. a lot of running the football and a lot of hard hitting scoring defense as well. It's been great between those two teams as well. So I like the under 39.5 there. And I'm going to lay the points with Ole Miss against Auburn. I think
We might as well just go all the way here. We got Michigan, Penn State, and Miami, Virginia Tech. Those are the only other 12 o'clock games.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm still going to stop here anyways. I like Ole Miss laying the points. I just think Auburn, just the quarterback played not very good for Auburn, and Ole Miss, they're the better offense, and they've got a pretty good defense compared to years past. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss by 3 scores in that one.
So how about Lane Kiffin up by 17 with getting the ball back with 48 seconds left to play, going into the hurry up and punching it into the end zone to end the game against Vandy in a game where the line was 17 to 17.5. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, it's Lane Kiffin.
Yep.
That's why you take. It's why you bet Ole Miss. That's why you bet exactly why you bet them. Ron, what do you think of this slot?
Unless Troy's on the other side, but BGSU and Miami, Ohio. I look in the MAC conference. I look to take underdogs quite often because I just don't really trust any team laying a lot of points in this conference. Usually, most of the teams in the conference don't play the best defensively. Some pretty volatile teams. The offense can do some damage, especially when you run the football effectively like Miami, Ohio. But I don't trust the quarterback play for Miami, Ohio, especially with Brett Gabbert out. He's been out since the beginning of the season, basically. So Avion Smith's done a pretty good job as the replacement, but he's more of a one-dimensional. He's got 250 rushing yards, doesn't really pass the ball too effectively, makes a good amount of mistakes. So I think Bowling Green at home, even though coming off the bad loss against Buffalo, they lost 38-7, but they were only outgained by 80 yards in that one. It was turnovers, mistakes, you name it. They had still had 20 first downs, 380 yards of offense. I think we see a much sharper performance here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see BGSU with the outright win. We know they're definitely good for an upset here and there. They beat Marshall this year. They beat Minnesota last year. So I think they're a well-coached team. I think they can cover the spread. I also like the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers laying the points here. Coastal Carolina's offense is really tough to stop these days, and they're an experienced offense with Grayson McCall quarterback. They kind of run a triple option type of offense, and if you can't stop the run, you're not going to be able to stop this Coastal offense. And ODU, we've seen mixed results. I mean, obviously, the beginning of the season, the big upset victory over Virginia Tech. But ever since that game, I haven't been impressed, and they have not done a good job against the run. The last in their last 4 weeks, they've given up at least 5 yards per carry and at least 200 rushing yards to 3 of those 4 teams. The only team they didn't do it against was against Arkansas State, who never runs the football. So I like Coastal Carolina big in that one.
Chris? Oh, me. I like actually Old Dominion in that game. I think Coastal probably wins the game. I just don't think they cover the spread. They haven't been a great cover team, and when we look at the way that it's gone, I think this one even shapes up for one that to me it just looks like 2 teams that are pretty much ball hawks on defense as far as the turnover goes. So that always opens up the back door. So I'll just take a shot here with ODU. Don't love it. But I also like Iowa State against Texas plus 15.5 points. Seems almost too easy. Texas coming off the big win against Oklahoma, and no one lets down their fan base like Steve Sarkisian. So this just looks like the perfect spot. They'd probably lose outright at home as 15.5 point favorites against an Iowa State team that has not moved the ball at all. And the thing is that the defense has been hung out to dry for Iowa State. They still rank pretty good, as far as the numbers go for a defense that's been on the field that long. But what they haven't been able to do is force the turnovers. And Texas has not turned the ball over at all this season. Just 1 turnover for the Texas offense. And that is very Steve Sarkisian coach team-like. And I think that he regresses to form here. And I think we see a good 3 to 4 Texas turnovers, usually in the worst possible spot. That's the way they usually happen. So I like Iowa State now, and I think you could lay a little bit. I wouldn't even sprinkle. I would bet the money line on that game as well. I don't see any reason to sprinkle. I kind of like Virginia Tech here with the points against Miami. They always play the Canes tough. Canes really look inconsistent and kind of scattered and actually horrible against the pass this season. And I like Ole Miss against Auburn. I think the Brian Harsin, thing is over. I think maybe Auburn goes for D'Amico Ryans. Maybe they take a shot at him to see if they can get him. I'm not sure, but someone's gonna. And
Maybe Matt Rule.
Could be Matt Rule, but could be Matt Rule, could be D'Amico Ryan. It's gonna be a big name guy, or it could be someone from a smaller program that's had some success too. Even though a lot of those guys have already been used and taken up. My guess is it won't be the return of Manny Diaz to the head coaching ranks. I kind of like Penn State plus the points here against Michigan. I think that game's probably a little bit closer than that 6.5. And that's it. We go to our next set of games. Buffalo against UMass at home. Then we've got the Ball State against UConn. Colorado versus Cal. Georgia versus Vandy, fresh off that last-second touchdown against Ole Miss where they punched it in. BYU against Arkansas. BYU going out and like real champs here from being an independent. They're playing everybody. Western Michigan versus Ohio. Tennessee versus Alabama, a real rivalry game. These teams really, it's a rivalry, but it just hasn't seemed like one lately because the scores have been so one-sided in this series. TCU against Oklahoma State. The Cowboys undefeated, ranked 7th in the nation, and are dogs against TCU. Syracuse against NC State. Oh, man. You bet Syracuse is undefeated, and the refs have certainly helped them out in that area. Indiana plus 11.5 against Maryland. Toledo, Kent State. UAB, Charlotte. Troy versus Texas State. Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky. Eastern Mich, Northern Illinois. Chris.
Well, I'm going to go with a couple I really like. I'm going to take Cal laying the big number on the road against Colorado. This Colorado team absolutely dreadful this season. They've given up 41 points in each of their games at the very least. And Cal, running not necessarily their strong suit, but Arizona ran all over Colorado, and Cal put up over 350 yards of ground attack against the Wildcats. I think this is another spot where Colorado just gets trampled. I look for a big day from Cal here, so I lay the points with Cal in that one. Also going to lay the points with Georgia here. I just think Vanderbilt's in trouble. Georgia usually runs all over Vanderbilt, tramples them. And last year's meeting, 62-0. I think we could see something similar here, maybe a 49-3 kind of game. So give me Georgia in that one. And the other one I like Oklahoma State TCU to go over 68.5. I think this is a game where both teams get into the high 30s, if not into the 40s. I'm surprised this game didn't open up in the low 70s. So, yeah, give me the over between Oklahoma State and TCU.
Gotta love those north of 10 touchdown totals. Ron?
Yeah.
Yep, we got our favorite segment coming up. It's time to play Where's UMass? This week, they are at home, where I believe they're 2-0 against the number this season at home, and they're miserable against the spread on the road. But since they're at home here, I'm taking the points with my good old Minutemen, getting 16.5 right now against the Buffalo Bulls. And, UMass this season, last year they were more offense-based. The defense couldn't stop anything. This year, the defense is actually stepping it up, and the offense has had a lot of issues at quarterback especially, but the defense keeps them in games. Last week, they covered against Liberty on that backdoor cover special. Wouldn't be surprised to see another one here, so give me the Minutemen getting the points. In the Alabama-Tennessee game, and a game I know a lot of people are pretty excited about, but personally, I can't forget about the Florida-Tennessee game where Anthony Richardson and a Florida offense that I'm not necessarily too high on was really able to move the ball at will in that game. I mean, they had 600 total yards of offense. AR had 450 passing yards in that game. I know Tennessee was up for most of that game, and maybe towards the end it was some garbage time yards, but I mean, Florida still moved the ball quite easily on that team. 33 points in that one. I think Bama's going to run all over them, in my opinion. I know a lot of people might disagree. We saw Bama last week barely get that win over A&M, and that was at home. They go on the road, but I think Tennessee's defense has some issues. Tennessee's offenses look strong, but this Bama defense is still one of the better defenses in the country, so I like Bama laying the points. I also like the NIU Huskies getting the points here against EMU. Like I said before, I don't love laying points with MAC teams. I especially don't like laying points with EMU. They were getting some points last week at Western Michigan. They covered the spread. They won the game by 22 points, but I don't love this defense. I do think NIU is underrated right now, so I think NIU wins the game outright, but I'll take the 2.5 points just in case.
I'm with you on Alabama against Tennessee. I just think that Tennessee defense is not going to hold up, and I think people are, looking at this game and they're just kind of look, all they're seeing is Tennessee offense. Alabama's owned this series. I mean, this is a real rivalry, but Alabama's absolutely just slaughtered them. Tennessee's come close once in the last decade, and outside of that, we're talking 3 touchdowns plus every single game.
9-3 against the spread in the last 12 between these two. Alabama is.
Ruffalo, did you go to 2 semesters at UMass?
No, I did not.
Then why do they call you Half Minute Man?
Something completely different.
Anyways,
look, I didn't have a car in high school, but there was a reason they called me Two Stroke.
Anyways, I like NC State against Syracuse plus the points. I think this one comes right down to the wire, and I think Syracuse. Well, I've won money on them. I've think that I like kind of a lot of the stuff that's going on there. I think they might be an overstated 5-0. Especially that Purdue game. I mean, I had them against Purdue, but they didn't win that game. They did not win that game. I think that, Maryland should have their way with Indiana, but once again, you got to be a little leery of the laundry, as twice in Bloomington this year we've seen incredible amounts of flags go the other way, including this past week against Michigan, which was ridiculous. I mean, it was the most penalties that Michigan's had since, 1908 or something. It was ridiculous. Outside of that, I think I'm good. Go to our next slot. Does Western Kentucky play Middle Tennessee 4 times a year? I think they do.
It's entirely possible.
Georgia Southern plays James Madison. The Dukes 5-0 against the number to start their FBS campaign. Michigan State against Wisconsin. Something's got to give there. USF against Tulane. This has been a real disappointing season for USF, a team that returned everybody from last year. North Texas versus La Tech. Washington, the Michael Penix show returns back home where they are okay. On the road, not so good. Florida Atlantic, live from Boca against Rice. Florida versus LSU, another rivalry game. SEC East versus SEC West, teams that play each other every single year. So that just means rivalry series. Colorado State versus Utah State. South Alabama versus Louisiana Monroe. Southern Miss against Arkansas State. Chris, it's a nice slot.
Yeah, it's a very nice slot. And I'm going to take 3 from this one. I like James Madison laying the points against Georgia Southern. JMU, this train keeps rolling. They're treating every game like it's their Super Bowl with no postseason because of the transition from FCS. And I really like the direction that James Madison's headed in. This Georgia Southern defense has been dreadful this season. I like James Madison to win that one by 2 scores, even on the road. I also like the under between Wisconsin and Michigan State, 49.5. I think it's just a bit too high. I think you're going to go back to seeing a lot of dink and dunk from Graham Mertz. Just those short passes, sort of chew up clock and methodically make their way down the field if they do. And Michigan State, I think, is a better team than their 2-4 record indicates. I think this is going to be a bit of a defensive struggle on both sides. I like the under 49.5 there. And I'm going to take the points with Arizona against Washington. Washington's dropped back-to-back games, albeit both of them on the road. Now they go back home and they're 4-0 against the spread, but this is an Arizona offense that can keep pace with Washington. I'd like the over here as well, over 72.5, but I think the stronger play here taking the 2 touchdowns plus the hook with the Wildcats in this one.
Ron?
Yeah, I got 2 friends. Both are named Joey. We call one Big Joe, one Little Joe, and Little Joe's a big Gator fan. Unfortunately, Little Joe was actually in a motorcycle accident yesterday, but he is okay. He has a broken bone, but he'll be okay. But he is a big Gator fan, and I do think that this Gator game on Saturday is going to be worse than the accident that he had yesterday. I like LSU to win the game outright. I don't really like this Florida team this season. I think there's definitely some pieces to the team that they can build on, but we saw last week the quarterback play wasn't up to par. Even the offense in general, only 300 total yards of offense. They got outgained by Missouri. I think it was honestly a lucky win. They didn't cover the spread, but I think it was a lucky win to just get the win outright. But LSU, this is a big-time rivalry, like Mitch said, and LSU is going to play this game tough. I know coming off that pretty ugly loss against Tennessee, but I still think LSU's defense is a lot better than what we've seen the last 2 weeks, and I think the offense does just enough here to win this game outright. So I'll take the points with LSU. And then I'm going to lean towards the under in that USF and Tulane game. I know Mitch said, USF, they got there were a lot of expectations because they brought back everybody, and then they added a Big 12 quarterback in Bohannon, but he has not been great, and the offense has not been great overall. I'm going to lean towards the under. Tulane's defense has really been a surprise. I mean, last year, Tulane's defense was one of the worst in really college football. I mean, they gave up 700 yards, 600 yards, 600 yards twice to ECU and SMU, but this year, the secondary is one of the best in the nation. They get some pressure on opposing QBs. They're pretty good against the run. They held East Carolina to 9 points last week, so I don't think USF does much offensively. I'll take the under.
All right. I've been to one Michigan State game, so I know one Michigan State cheer. You ever been to a Michigan State game, guys? You want to learn the Michigan State cheer real quick? It's a real easy
Sure.
one. It's a real easy one.
Well,
It goes like
pom-poms.
it goes like this. No, you don't need pom poms.
Ow.
Michigan, Michigan, Michigan State.
Really?
That's it. It's the whole thing. Michigan, Michigan, Michigan State. Yeah. All right, you don't seem too impressed. Anyways, I'm not impressed with either of these teams this year, but I love betting against Ethel Mertz. I'm taking Michigan State in this one. I don't know. South Florida, it's like, boy, I really expected more from this team this season. I acted like, like I knew something when I picked BYU over them. Now it's like, the layup. I don't know. Washington at home, 14.5 is a big number, but that's big for a reason. I like the Owls also back in Boca for this one. Maybe stop over at Flakowitz Deli there for a quick little corned beef on rye before the game. And then Florida LSU. I like LSU big in this one too. I think that LSU.
Sorry, little Joe.
Yeah, I just think this Florida team not good enough, and LSU the last few years have kind of had Florida's number. Wasn't that the Dan Mullen got fired game?
No, that was Missouri.
Yeah, but this was a piece of the puzzle. It was a piece of the puzzle.
Don't forget the Marco Wilson throwing the shoe and
yeah.
LSU winning on the final kick. I was at that game.
Throw that shoe. I had shoes thrown at me at Fenway Park in the bleachers.
Oh, really?
Throw that shoe, you're out of here. I used to pay the guys to get into the bleachers when I was in college. We couldn't afford the $3. You throw that shoe, you're out of here. People would buy like tubs that they'd think someone like knocked over an ice cream vendor. They threw ice cream at us. Florida State against Clemson. East Carolina versus Memphis. Notre Dame, Stanford, traditional rivalry. UK, Mississippi State. This Mississippi State team is really good, man. You take back that second half against LSU. This team's, top 10 ranked. Purdue versus Nebraska. Duke versus North Carolina. J.R. Reed's a man-child out there. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
Nope.
That was like Dick Vitale, J.R. Reed went to North Carolina. He's a man-child out there. We'll just stick with these 7:30 time slot games. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, the couple I like here. I'm going to go with the over 58.5 between Memphis and East Carolina. I like East Carolina's offense. Holt Nailers, I think he can move the football against a shaky Memphis defense, but Memphis should have no problem pouring the points on here either. I see this game, get with both teams getting into the 30s here.
Do you know any Michigan State cheers?
Is it Michigan State? Is that the one? I think the other one I'm going to take Mississippi State laying the points on the road against Kentucky. Kentucky's got solid pass defense numbers, but you look at the teams they played, the best pass offense that they faced of the bunch, 56th in the country in South Carolina. The rest of them usually, or at least the rest of those teams, much further down on the list. I think Mississippi State's going to have a field day here. I don't think Kentucky can keep up. I think only laying 4.5 is a gift, so I'm going to lay the points with Mississippi State.
You don't think they're looking ahead to the Egg Bowl yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. That'd be a Bittler. Bittler would be like, they're looking ahead to the Egg Bowl. It's like, it's in 2.5 months. It's like, they're still looking. Ron?
We went up until the what time slot?
7:30.
7:30. Yeah, I'm going to take ECU for a bounce back here against Memphis. ECU is kind of a tough team to read this season. They saw that just losing that extra point in the field goal. They were away from that to beat NC State at home. That was an awesome game to start the season, but they beat ODU, blew them out. They covered against USF, but then they lose outright to Navy and Tulane. So it's been a weird season for ECU, but I still think Memphis last week. I mean, how about you want to talk about a collapse? They were up, I think, 13 with a minute or so to go, and somehow they lose the game 33-32 after Houston puts a touchdown on the board. Houston had 4th and 11 and 4th and 9 on that drive to score the first touchdown. Then they get the onside kick. I mean, Memphis has some issues defensively, that's for sure. They don't get much pressure on the quarterback. Virtually no sacks from this team, only 8 sacks all season long. And this is a good ECU offensive line, so I think they're going to be able to run the football well. And I think Holton Naylor's going to have a lot of time in the pocket. So he's got really talented receivers. I think ECU scores at will. So give me the Pirates laying the points.
I like a lot of games in the slot. I like Clemson a lot against Florida State. This is a really good Clemson team. They're not getting the strongest quarterback play in the world, but they're still really good. And Dabo Swinney, twice this season, has gone salt in the wound touchdowns. He did it last week in the red bandana game of all games, up by 24 with 5 minutes left to go. Goes into the hurry up and is throwing deep. Finally, they get down into the red zone. He throws it into the end zone. It's like, yikes, And then they interview him after the game, and he acts like nothing happened. Second time he's done that too at the post-game interview. The first one said, "Well, they understand because we wanted to try out our freshman quarterback." This one he said, "Well, we didn't play too well in the first half." Is what he said. It's like, okay, but that Boston College coach, I'll tell you what, he wasn't buying any of it. He was not happy at all about it. I like Notre Dame to slaughter Stanford in this one. I think they absolutely slaughter them. This Notre Dame they have a really good running back on Notre Dame. I think he's number 23. Couldn't tell you his name. Man, is he good though. Really good. I think him and I think that 23 on Notre Dame, and I think that the kid on Michigan are the two of the better running backs in the country. That could play in the NFL. That will be like in today's NFL. Not like these guys maybe like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the NFL might not have fit so much. Maybe they would have. But in today's NFL, these guys really fit, especially that Corum. And I think this guy too. This guy also on Notre Dame, same thing.
You put Robinson. Again? You put Robinson in there as well from Texas.
Yeah, I think he's good, but he doesn't seem as sturdy as these guys. That Corum just seems like, he's going to be one of those guys. It'd be tough to knock him out, right? He is.
And Charbonnet from UCLA.
Yeah, he might be a little to the tall side. A little tall. He ran good against Utah though.
Mm-hmm. He's having a good year.
He is having a nice year. Running back used to be everything in the NFL. Now it's nothing, but it's cyclical. Because now what we're seeing is, the defenses have finally caught up to the offenses in the NFL as far as the pass defense goes. So now they will go back to the run. That's why we saw them feed the ball to Derrick Henry 28 times last week.
And did nothing.
3.6 yards to carry. That means if you gave him the ball every single play.
Yeah.
If you gave him the ball every single play, they'd get a first down every single drive.
Compare 3.6 yards per carry to every other running back in the league, and he'd be dead last.
Yeah, but if you look at the runs that they called back, then it was probably like 6.8.
Baloney.
Carry.
Judge Judy, baloney.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. He ran hog wild. Everyone knows it. Anyways,
Liar.
if you run the ball 28 times, you got to be pretty confident that it's going to work. That's
not even that much. Well, he ran it himself 28 times?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot.
That means it's going to work. I think the end zone got in the way of a couple runs also. Stopped them. That'll kill
Same
him.
with Diami Brown's 75-yard tutty.
Well, that
Could have
was
went going for 200 plus.
the time when it happened the most. So Edgerrin James's last game at Miami against UCLA, he ran for 440 yards, and the end zone kept getting in the way. It's like
Goodness.
he would have run for 1,000. It was against an undefeated UCLA team. Last game of the season. Cade McCown was the quarterback of.
What year was that?
Let's see. And I'm sure I overstated the yards, but let's see.
Oh,
Edgerrin James versus UCLA.
It'd been late 90s or 2000, wouldn't it? Am I going too far?
Miami upsets number 1998, 49-45. Miami upsets number 3, UCLA. Edgerrin James, 299 yards on 39 carries. He would have had 500. The end zone kept getting in the way. I'm telling you. How many touchdowns did he have? A lot. Scoreboard in the East end zone read Miami 49. 209 yards. At one point, he'd broken the 300-yard mark until he was stopped in the backfield. So he had passed 300. He got stopped. 3 touchdowns, 45-yard touchdown, 10-yarder, and a 1-yarder. Yeah, the end zone kept getting in the way. Anyways, I think Notre Dame runs all over Stanford because Stanford's straight ass this season. They did show up last week, lost by 1 point.
mm-hmm.
That was their season. I also think Purdue is a pretty good, underrated team. I think they beat Syracuse in that game, and their only loss is really the last segment loss to Penn State, who in hindsight is pretty good this season. North Carolina versus Duke. I think that Carolina defense takes it on the chin again. I like Duke outright in the money line on that one. New Mexico State against New Mexico. Take the gloves off on that one. Is that the Beehive boot? Chris? New Mexico State. I know they're playing for keeps.
Winner gets,
Well, that's
the winner
from
gets to keep their
Utah.
program.
Oh, the Utah State is Utah State. Colorado State is the Beehive boot, right?
Let me see if I can find it. It's
We
the
saw-
Rio
we-
Grande
we saw the
rivalry.
old milk can already. Boise Fresno.
Hmm.
I like the wagon wheel, and then you have Louisville Cincinnati, the keg of nails.
Yeah, this one's the Rio Grande rivalry.
No.
Mm.
Utah USC. Utah favored by 3.5 after getting run over by Charbonnet last week. I mean, he ran over them. Oregon State against Washington State. Washington State's defense looking pretty shabby these days. Oregon State, I believe, was on that 1-point win over Stanford. UNLV versus the Force. Fresno versus San Jose State. Man, does Fresno stink this year. And Hawaii versus Nevada. Chris?
Yeah, the lone one I like in this time slot, I'm going to go with Washington State plus the points. I might even go money line against Oregon State. I think Oregon State should have lost that game to Stanford last week. And, the 2 losses for Washington State this season come to Oregon, a game they still got to cover in, and to USC on the road. I think, Oregon and USC far better than what Oregon State is putting on the field. And I think Washington State's going to be able to keep pace if they don't win this game outright. So I'm taking Washington State plus the 3.5 in that one.
And I think that Nevada-Hawaii game is probably the worst game on the board. I mean, Nevada's offense is oof. I watched that game with Nevada-Colorado State. That was a tough one to watch, I'll have to say. I mean, neither team was doing much anything. In Nevada, I mean, I don't even know how they had 350 yards of offense in that one. If you watch the second half, they had a 1 touchdown drive, but that was really it. And I don't even know what to think in that game. Hawaii looked decent, actually, last week against San Diego State. So, and they started to get their offense going in the second half a little bit. So I don't know, maybe take the points there with the Bows, but nothing I love in that game. But in that Washington State game and Oregon State, Washington State's, I think their defense is overall not in too bad a shape, but their offensive line really struggling, giving up at least 4 sacks in 2 of their last 3 games. Last week, giving up 5 to USC. I don't necessarily love the quarterback play from Cameron Ward. He's had a good year overall, but he does make a good amount of mistakes, and the run game has been inconsistent. Last week they got going a little bit, but for the most part this year, under 3 yards per carry in 3 of their first 5 games. So, I do think Oregon State is the better team. I think the line is I think you're getting a good price with Oregon State because of Washington State really outdoing expectations, competing with Oregon in that first game. They beat Wisconsin on the road in an upset win. I think they were getting 20-something points or something. So, the books, I think, are giving up a little bit too much respect in this one. So I'm going to take Oregon State and lay the points.
To me, this Utah-USC game looks like the Utah versus Oregon game last year. I think they just start running downhill on them and they just put them away pretty good. Air Force is a good team. UNLV, it just seems the least respect they get, the more they show up, and then the more you expect from them, the worse they are. So they probably show up here, lose by 6, or win outright. I hate Fresno. I tell you, I've been doing this a long time, so I've done a ton of videos throughout the years, and man, those Fresno State fans are pretty mean. I'm going to take San Jose State here just to see if we could rile them up a little bit. Anyways, anything else that we might have missed on today's show, Chris? Tom Tuttle from Washington State.
No, I think I'm good. I love this card, and it's going to be hard for me to sort of narrow down the games that I like. I like a lot on this one.
Romanelli probably has no idea what I'm talking about. I just dropped it in the Slack for you.
No clue.
I just put it in the Slack for you.
Oh, okay. Well, Yankee game today has been postponed. There's information. It's going to be moved to tomorrow.
Really?
Yep.
All right. Well, there you have it.
1 o'clock start time tomorrow.
All right, I'm going to mark that in my in the picks that are for sale so nobody buys it.
And that's all I've got on my. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy with this card. I think last week I liked the card a lot more, I would say, than this week. But I'll certainly have some plays I like more than others. But I got to go through it over and over and over and see which ones stand out.
You'll never forget the way we thrilled the nation with that T formation. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Make it a winning week. Of course, we'll be back Saturday. Updates on all these games. Much, much more. Of course, Chris and I will be back tomorrow morning. Make it a winning week. Love college football, and it's my favorite sport.